I'm gonna have to get out the red string and corkboard for this video because it's gonna be just all over the place. Hello everyone, and welcome back to me talking about things. Today, I'm going to be looking at the entirety of the Hoyoverse that is currently available and try to piece the whole thing together, since I think we finally have the key pieces to understand why it's the Hoyoverse as opposed to miHoYo. But before we do that, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what the IPs Hoyoverse has and which ones we're actually going to be looking at. Because, well, they may be the minds behind Nova Desktop and they are planning to release something called Zenless Zone Zero. They don't have a story. Or at least they don't have one as of yet. One is in production, and the other is just an anime girl who will just appear as your wallpaper as soon as you download it, without having to do any setup or anything. Even after I uninstalled it, it still was there. It scared the shit out of me. That leaves us with Honkai Impact, Genshin Impact, Tears of Themis, and Honkai Star Rails. Each of these games are simulated worlds. And I don't mean in the sense that they're games that we can download and play. I mean that each of these games take place in a world where there is some mass interconnected system of databases hosting fake worlds, which they're all connected to. See, both Genshin Impact and Star Rails features people who travel between universes as their main character. We also know that the multiverse is seen in Honkai Impact, since they say as much to the player. They compare the universes to cups, which, if filled too much, will overflow and dip into the other cups and yada yada yada. Plus, there's apparently an alternate universe Bronya running around named Bronny. Yeah, I don't know a lot about it. It's very complicated. I had to try and get Azura, my sister, who plays Honkai, to explain it to me, and it's just all over my head. Point is, that's 3 of the 4 IPs where we know people are able to jump around worlds. But how can we be sure that they're simulated worlds instead of just different planets in a solar system? Or that they're in some kind of database? For that, we want to look at first Genshin and Tears of Themis. See, in Tears of Themis, there's an NPC that can be found in events who openly acknowledge that they're in a game. At first, it seems like a fun little haha meta moment, but it keeps happening and even becomes a key part of one of the events, making it feel more deliberate. It's like they desperately want you to notice this detail, even though said detail has nothing to do with the overarching story of the game itself. The only thing that this could be for, then, is the overarching mystery tied to the Hoyoverse. As for the clues in Genshin Impact, we want to look at Samario. Irminshal, Forbidden Knowledge, and even Nahida's animations all link back to computers and databases. As we see through the Wanderer's character quest, Irminshal is essentially a database for the entirety of Teyvat. It not only stores knowledge about everything in the world, but can also alter that knowledge and information. When something is deleted, we see that every person who's registered by Irminshal loses that information and comes up with the same change. And then there's Nahida's animations. Her normal attacks make keys from a keyboard appear, and her charge attack is just a click and drag that you would use to select things on a desktop. What's really interesting is that the Dendronosis seems to be basically an admin key. That is why both Nahida and the Wanderer have access to that power, because they are the ones who had the admin key. This would in turn mean that the Heavenly Principles is just the code designed to dictate what can and cannot happen before the world crashes. It would also suggest that Forbidden Knowledge, and I believe the Stellarons and Star Rails, are actually just a virus that is corrupting the code. There was even an event in Honkai Impact where you help someone called the System Administrator to unhack the game, and later on, that System Admin helps the characters during the main story as someone meant to represent the hope of the people of the world and those who want to see the end of the story, which is just an over-the-top meta element. I don't know how else you could possibly explain it if not proof of that. Then there's also the new event in Star Rails, which features the Aether cartridge, where we see that people are physically able to hack the world around them and change things. We also see that Silverwolf is able to alter the weakness and stats of the enemies that she fights, something that could very well suggest that a person could hack into the world and change their own data and stats at a certain terminal to give them different elements, like Statues of the Seven, for instance. The Hoyoverse being a series of connected databases would then also explain why there are so many quote-unquote crossover characters. Things like the Himiko in Star Rail, who definitely can't be the Himiko from Honkai Impact, the Archons in Genshin being reskins of certain Honkai characters, and so on. It would also explain what the hell the stars being fake means in Genshin, and raise interesting implications about the godly status of our traveler, but that's a whole other video that that I'm gonna do later. For this one, I want to try and think about why someone might have created so many vast artificial universes. This part is just largely speculation. We have a limited data pool, but what's the harm in exercising the brain with some weird thought exercises? The first thing we want to do is consider the similarities between all 4 universes. Well, it's completely possible that there are other facts and details that I'm missing. The one that immediately stuck out to me was the fact that they all have some kind of human experimentation and element of immortality or altering the body. This is more obvious in Tears of Themis, where the whole thing you're fighting is people testing out illegal drugs, but we can also see it with the Honkais, with Kale, and with that weird little immortality cult, the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus. The different universes would create different materials and would allow whoever is behind the system to therefore gather data and look for a solution to death faster. However, I do think it's safe to say that the simulations aren't exactly going as planned. From the opening of Genshin Impact and the way that Irminsul is unable to process the Traveler, it's safe to say that people weren't meant to be jumping from one simulation to the next. But as the story of Honkai Impact progresses, and eventually by the time of Star Rails, universal travel is mostly common knowledge and generally accepted. This suggests that the simulations went beyond what was expected of them and, in essence, created one of the main themes of the series. The idea of struggling for who you really are and deciding your own fate. Now, it's interesting that Tears of Themis is so different, not only from the playstyle, but in the base design of the universe they're in. There's no magic or animal people or any fantasy elements whatsoever. It's also the only game that doesn't have the copied characters. Again, there's no proof of this, but I dare say that this could imply that Tears of Themis, while a simulated universe, is a different version of the project. Either a reboot meant to be more focused on the goal, or a previous version that was unsuccessful due to the interference of our team. I would wager a little bit that they might have been the first version of the simulation, because on one hand, it's a little bit more close to what we in our current world have, but also because we see references to Tears of Themis in Star Rails where they're fictional characters, and if they came after in the timeline, then they wouldn't exist to be referenced. Though they also could be at the same time. Who knows? Again, a lot of this latter half of the video is pure speculation. It could be that the goal was always for the people of the universe to gain sentience, and the unknown god just didn't want anyone coming into their territory, so they were kicking out any travelers who tried to get near to that. It could be some weird twisted way to store the remnants of humanity onto a server so that even though there's an apocalypse, humanity will live on. I have about as much proof for those things as I do with the aging. But like I said, no harm in theorizing. So let me know what you think. Why do you think that these simulated universes exist? And yeah, have a great day. Stay safe. Goodbye.